PTDF is not looking for the best candidate on paper. They are looking for, you might have even served in NNPC, and that does not guarantee that you get or land the award. Do not brag so much, but you should also brag.
Hello, Favour. Good evening, and thank you for joining us again for the second session of the PTDF scholarship. And today, so for those that are watching for the first time, there's a first video which you should go and watch. This is just a demo application, and we are going to show you how to apply. So, Favour, you're welcome once again. Thank you for agreeing to come, and we'll just go right into it.
Thank you, Kama.
One question that people would want to know is like how to really make a successful application that would stand out. What do you think are the things you need to include in your application to really stand out?
All right, thank you. Well, there isn't a comprehensive list on what to include, but there are good things to include. And then to tackle your question head on, I think your question is what makes a successful application? And well, I would say first, I would want to establish that PTDF is not looking for the best candidate on paper.
Okay.
Yeah, they are looking for an aligned one, one that has aligned himself or herself with the PTDF's mandate. And that's very important. You can have all the academic qualifications, all the professional qualifications on paper. You might have even served in an NPC, and that does not guarantee that you get or land the award. So it's very important that when preparing your application, you try as much as possible to avoid projecting yourself as, okay, I've worked here, I've worked in Shell, I've worked in Chevron, I've worked in Total, I'm a shareholder in NNPC, and all of that. It would not guarantee your success with the application, but you've got to align yourself very much so to the PTDF's mandate. And what are some of these things you can do to align yourself? Because ultimately, that's what will make your application stand out. So the first thing I want to say is, well, said that already in passing, that alignment is non-negotiable. For every scholar who has been sponsored by the PTDF, they've got one thing in common. They align their application to the PTDF's mandate. And since that's not negotiable, one thing your application should achieve is to show a clear progression of your academic or professional trajectory. For instance, what have you been doing in the past? It's good you talk about it. Okay, say you're applying for your MSc, for instance, and the prerequisites to an MSc is you must have concluded your first degree. So what did you do in your first degree? That talks about what you did in the past. And for MSc applicants, another thing you should mention is your proposed study. Okay, now that you've done this in the past, what are you proposing? What are you looking at doing during your master's degree? And you'll have to tie your past and present, or what you're proposing, into how it affects Nigeria, especially the oil and gas sector. Now, talking about the impact of your proposed study on Nigeria, you have to make it local to the oil and gas sector, because that's what the PTDF is about. If you're talking about how your proposed course of study would impact the agricultural sector or the security of lives in Nigeria, well, I can guarantee you that no matter how sound your proposal is, PTDF might just refer you to some other agencies that are saddled with the responsibility of managing the security or agricultural efficiency within the country. So your academic and professional progression has to speak to what you've done in the past, your proposed course of study for master's students, for instance, and how all of that will improve something in the oil and gas sector in Nigeria. And for PhD students, something similar. What have you done in the past? You've had your first degree, you've had your master's degree. What's the correlation between your first degree and your master's degree? Hope you're not just beating about the bush and just studying for studying's sake. How have all of the information you've gathered over time brought you to this point where you feel you're confident to undertake research for the next 3-4 years, as the case may be? So it's important to show that clear academic and professional progression. Another thing I want to highlight is you've also got to show evidence of capacity. For a good number of people, yes, they've gone through their first degree, second degree, but the result on paper now, which is what you'll be judged by, doesn't show that for some people, it doesn't show that they were very serious in their previous studies. So that's going to raise concerns to PTDF, And that's why if you go through the requirements, there is a minimum class of degree. You should have evidence of capacity in previous program, in previous roles. All the things you've done in the past, you've got to show evidence that you've been on top of your game, academically, professionally speaking, and what have you. And it goes without saying that when you are pitching your proposal for the case of PhD students or your statement of purpose for the case of MSc applicants, you have to coherently state all of these experiences from the past. This is what I did in the past. Do not brag so much, but you should also brag, Do not brag, but also do brag, Talk about all the great things you've done in previous roles, in previous programs. And when you're doing this, it's important that you state it coherently. It should flow nicely from the top through the bottom, And that's really important. I think one other thing I want to mention for applicants, by all means, avoid outsourcing your thinking or outsourcing your story, Avoid generalist ideas and statements, So I grew up in so and so part of the country, and just avoid all those generalist statements people make to appeal to the sentiments of the interviewers. It will not work for you. Just be authentic and tell your story the way it is. Your story is unique. Everybody's story is. No two applicant stories are the same. And once the panel or the reviewing panel, sense that, okay, you're just copying someone, or you're just retelling someone else's story, you are already shooting yourself in the leg. So every strong PTDF application tells one story, and that story you are telling is highlighting who you are, is highlighting the reason for the course of study you've chosen, is also highlighting the relevance. So if you're proposing, I want to do this, okay, why now? How is it relevant to the current, time we are in? And then finally, you should also highlight how that proposed study benefits Nigeria, the oil and gas sector, to be precise. So I think you're putting all of this together in your application. Now, your application, of course, comprises of several things. It comprises of your certificates, previous certificates, comprises of all your written statements of purposes or proposal, and every other thing you are attaching as supporting documents to your application. And hopefully we'll have a demo application run after or later in the call, so we see how all of these things come together to form a solid application.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, for revealing those secrets. And from what I understood from what you said, it's like the difference between a master's and a PhD application is just that for a master's program, you submit an SOP, and for a PhD, you submit a proposal.
Absolutely, that's one of the difference. And the major, I dare say, the other difference would be, say for master's applicants, for instance, submitting or uploading conference publication is not mandatory.
Okay.
Well, if you've got it, more power to you, but it's not mandatory. On my very first run, I didn't have any conference publication or presentation. But I was successful anyways. So for master's applicants, that's not a requirement. But for PhD applicants, again, some PhD applicants actually get the award without publications, but that would mean that they've got other things that helped them out. Say maybe their professional experience or industrial experience, the quality of their research during their MSc and all of those things. But primarily, the difference between the MSc track and the PhD track would be the statement of purpose and the proposal that goes in.
So that means the PhD applicants do not submit any statement of purpose?
No, they don't.
Okay.
They don't.
So, I'm now thinking about how they get to know you and your motivations. So you have to submit a CV then?
No, again, that's one interesting thing with the PTDF application. Neither track is required to submit a CV. What you do anyways is when we go through the application, you're going to fill some of those prompts on the portal.
Okay.
Yeah, you fill some of those prompts on the portal. Say, for instance, the course of study. So there are 3 choices, first, second, and third choices. You're going to fill them out. And you're also going to fill what direction you're going to. So are you going to the UK? Are you going to the GFM?
Okay.
That's also there. You're also going to fill out your grades from your WIAC results, for instance, or NECO. So all of this information comes together to form, the total application, which will be reviewed on the points-based system, PTDF adults.
Yeah, cool. But I'm now wondering, since you are submitting a proposal for the PhD track, do you need a supervisor before sending in your application?
Before sending in your application, well, no.
Okay.
But that's a little tricky because on the guidelines published by PTDF, there is a caveat for applicants looking to pursue research, PhD applicants now looking to pursue research in Germany. There's a requirement of having a supervisor by the time of the interview, not application submission.
Okay.
Yeah, so that requirement kicks in during interview stage.
Okay.
But for the application stage, you do not necessarily need to have, you do not need a supervisor to turn in your application for the very first phase.
Yeah.
But subsequently, you need to have one, especially for applicants.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this means that the proposal you're submitting is just like, this is something I would like to do, not necessarily something that the supervisor has already approved. So before your application, you now have to make sure that a supervisor likes it and actually wants to work with you on it.
Yeah. So your proposal, basically, it's more like your idea. So your proposal should be broad enough to give a sense of the direction you want to work with.
Yeah.
And tailored also such that a proposal can actually, come in and make modifications where necessary. Yeah. So for the proposal you're submitting, it's just an idea, and PTDF also has a guideline on what your proposal should contain. So they do not expect you to, do a literature review, for instance.
Okay.
Yeah. So think the sections that PTDF prescribes is the introduction and background to the study.
Okay.
Then they want to have an idea of maybe your research questions and the methodology, how you'd be retrieving your data.
Okay.
What kind of data you'd be working with, for instance. Primary data, what would be your source?
Okay.
And how would you work with that data? How do you get it?
Okay.
And maybe a couple of references to underpin all the claims you're making in your introduction and background to the study section.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be more than 5 pages.
Okay.
There's a cap on that as well.
Okay.
For PTDF.
So I'm now also wondering, so for each of the countries, how do you search for a supervisor? Do you have an idea, like if I'm going to Malaysia or to Germany or wherever, like how do I get a supervisor? And I remember the last time you talked about partner universities, which the PTDF has. So at least for the UK, do they also have partner universities in other countries? And do they, like, how do you get a supervisor?
Okay, that's a very good question. I'll start off with the UK. Yeah, so generally speaking, the PTDF sponsors applicants or awardees to, well, I'll say 2 different locations. It's more than that, but when I get into the details, we'll have the meat of that. So the UK and the GFM track.
And GFM means what, sorry?
Okay, the GFM track is Germany, France, and Malaysia.
Okay.
So when an applicant is awarded the scholarship on the GFM track, you have the liberty to choose between Germany, France, and Malaysia.
Okay.
Yeah. From the last information I know, which is as recent as last year. So the GFM track is quite flexible in the sense that once you have the award to GFM track, you can go to any of those countries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So once you get your award, you can go to Germany for your research, you can go to Malaysia, you can go to France. That is assuming that you probably picked them as first, second, and third choices. And in the case where you didn't do that, but for some reason, you decide that, okay, I want to go to this other location as against the one I applied for, as against the one I pitched for in my proposal, you are still able to do that.
Okay.
That's the flexibility with the GFM track.
Okay.
But with the UK, it's not as much. The UK adopted a different approach. And from last year, PTDF came up with this new model for the award, which is referred to as the split site. And what that means is you are going to be doing your research in 2 countries, in Nigeria and then in the UK.
Okay.
And that started off last year. The split site. And what that entails is that they've got 3 partner universities in the UK. And they insist that all awardees conduct their research in these partner universities. As of this moment that we speak, it is 3 universities, and those universities are Robert Gordon University, RGU, University of Strathclyde, and I think Portsmouth University. These are the 3 universities PTDF partners with in the UK. So whatever you are doing or whatever you are looking to do, it's expected that you do those, or you do that in either of these 3 universities. And PTDF recently set up a college of petroleum and I think engineering studies in Nigeria, Kaduna to be precise. And that is where scholars will also conduct, I believe. That's the plan, at least on paper. That is where scholars will conduct the remaining bits of their research. Yes, that's where they'll conduct the remaining bits of their research. And yeah, that's the model that operates. So for the UK or the split sites, getting supervisors is not as tough as the GFM, for instance, because there are partner universities, and beyond having these partner universities, there are a list of approved courses also to undertake in these partner universities. Yeah. And there are academics, there are professors, in the different schools within these universities that major in these different areas. So just to help streamline the search for supervisors in the UK, I think I've got this list of items I want to just run through. The first thing I would say is, before setting out to look for a supervisor, you must have identified your research team. So you are not just, looking at the pool of every academic in the UK and trying to find who you want to work with. So the first thing you have to do is to identify the research team that you're working under. So if you're working under sustainability, for instance, well, the partner university has streamlined things down. You can only search across 3 universities. So that means that your focus is RGU, University of Strathclyde, and Portsmouth. And what you can do, an easy thing to do, is to look at the university's website, go over the approved course, what you want to work with, or the department pages, for instance. Just surf through their site and look up academics doing what, basically. So if you are tilting towards sustainability, for instance, then you are certainly looking for schools or departments that are aligned towards that. And in the UK, I believe across all universities as well, there are, they put out the academics. This academic is what he does. This is what he's been doing. And I think you should get valuable information when you do the search. Other pathways you can look out for is research papers, for instance, who published what, maybe in conference from last year. If it aligns with what you're doing, you can contact the professor of the academic. Google Scholar is another very good option. But then again, remember the constraint is the approved university, the approved courses. You have to bind yourself within that boundary. Doing anything outside of that would, just be tantamount to failure at the end of the day. So for the UK, I think that's the method to follow. So once you do your search, you can come up with maybe about 3 supervisors you think you can work with, and you can just mention their names in your proposal or your application or your SOP. And once your application goes through, then you can make contact with these professors or academics and tell them of your intention.
Wait, does this mean that even they don't need to have agreed to supervise you before you tell them to the PTDF, and even the PTDF can approve without even the supervisor approving you?
Yes, they can. That happens.
Okay.
It's quite flexible. And again, for the UK, in the very first part of this conversation we had, recall I told you that the UK basically they're all out for your money. So provided that you've got your funding and your sponsors, well, again, you would work, but they are more inclined to take in students on board who have their funding. You are spending thousands and thousands of pounds, and that's what they're looking out for. Aside, the other things that they're doing. So yeah, they do not have to accept you before you put their names out there. I'll use that loosely. But yeah, one thing that you should do also when looking out for supervisors, because supervisors appreciate researchers who have clarity, not just the ones who are desperate. I want to do a PhD because I'm not got any other thing I'm doing at the moment. You need you to be clear on what it is you want to do, the problem or the research area you want to focus on, and if it aligns with their interest, why not? You take it on board.
Especially since you have your own money,
exactly. So yeah, that applies across the board to the other side of the GFN. Once you have identified your research theme, Google is your friend. You'll have to look out to do your search, research academics, research institutes, research departments who are doing what you're interested in, and have a look at their academics and see which of them aligns with what you're proposing. And just send a targeted email to them. I think I'd also mention that if you're sending emails, avoid sending general bulk emails. So you do your search and you find out that 3-4 academics in a particular school or institute that your interest kind of aligns with theirs, and you just send the same emails to all of them. These academics talk, in their meetings over lunch, and they'll be discussing your email to make sure that do not give them what to talk about. Well, especially when it's your email seeking to show interest for them to take you on board. So send targeted emails. So if they have papers that align with what you're doing, take the time, take the pain, go through that paper, study it, and it doesn't hurt if you mention a thing or two from that paper in your email, especially tying it to what you're looking at studying. And if you come across as someone who has clarity, they'll reach out to you to respond.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, thank you so much for that expose. And then we'll go right into the demo application. So maybe you can share your screen.